Good morning. It's Thursday, September 10th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, the U.S. presidential candidates face off on the Iranian deal as House Republicans call on the White House to hand over more details about the nuclear agreement. As a surge of migrants from the Middle East push through Europe, we'll take a look at the smallest victims of the crisis, the children, and examine the challenges and hardships they face. And later on the show, Canadian elections have never been so dramatic. We get a sneak at the candidates' Instagram accounts. Good morning, I'm Yael Wisner-Levy, and we begin today in Washington, D.C., where House Republican leaders are changing their tactics on the Iran nuclear deal after a group of conservatives from within the party delayed the start of a debate on a resolution that would block the deal and called on the White House to hand over more information. While the U.S. president has now gathered sufficient votes to successfully shoot down the Republican effort to disapprove the agreement, the vote itself appears to be becoming entangled in a series of procedural delays. From filibusters from the left to internal revolts on the right, the deal that essentially seeks to temporarily freeze the nuclear program in exchange for sanction relief, is now receiving what we call the full D.C. treatment. The deal is also a focus point of the early presidential race. Yesterday, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton promised she would not shrink from military action against Iran if it tries to obtain atomic weapons, and threatened to impose penalties for even the smallest violations, presenting her, quote, distrust and verify doctrine. So to help us make sense of it all this morning, we're joined in studio by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ami Kaufman, you're here, and you'll be here with the press review later today. And with us is also the former Israeli envoy to the United States and an expert on U.S.-Israel relations, Ambassador Yoav Ettingel. Thank you for joining us. Well, let's all take a look at the next report, recapping yesterday's events, and we'll take it from there.
You remember President Reagan's line about the Soviets, trust but verify? My approach will be distrust and verify.
That was the figure of speech used by Hillary Clinton Wednesday as she addressed the Iran deal at length for the first time since announcing her candidacy for U.S. president. While Clinton openly supports the deal, it is a problematic issue for her. The Iran deal is unpopular with large parts of the American public, including Jewish voters in swing states, such as Florida. Therefore, Clinton is eager to set herself apart from President Barack Obama, who many feel is banking on a partnership with the Iranian reformist camp.
This is not the start of some larger diplomatic opening, and we shouldn't expect that this deal will lead to broader changes in their behavior. I believe this deal and a joint strategy for enforcing it makes Israel safer. I say that with humility. I'm not Israeli. I don't know what it's like to live under constant threat from your neighbors in a country where the margin for error is so thin.
Many have criticized the Iran deal for not addressing the Islamic Republic's ongoing support for international terrorism and its threats against other countries in the region. These comments were made Wednesday morning by Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei.
Some of the Zionists have said that given the results of the nuclear negotiations, they have been relieved of concerns about Iran for 25 years. But we tell them that basically, you will not see the next 25 years, and with God's grace, nothing under the name of the Zionist regime will exist in the region by then.
I'll increase support for Israeli rocket and missile defenses and for intelligence sharing.
Clinton also noted she plans similar support for U.S. partners among the Arab Sunni states. But all this has in fact already been offered by the Obama administration. Clinton also noted what she plans to do beyond that which has already been proposed by the White House.
I'll crack down on the shipment of weapons to Hamas and push Turkey and Qatar to end their financial support. It's time to eliminate the false distinction that some still make between the supposed political and military wings. If you're part of Hezbollah, you're part of a terrorist organization, plain and simple.
Meanwhile, the administration has managed to rack up the support of 42 U.S. senators for the nuclear deal with Iran, one more than required for a Senate filibuster. The Republicans are still planning to exercise maximum pressure on the Democrats. There is even talk of scheduling the vote for September 11th. Adding some symbolic historical significance, the vote makes things easier for deal supporters. President Obama wishes to avoid using his veto powers to protect what he sees as his major foreign policy achievement so far. Some, however, see it as anything but.
We're now joined via Skype from Washington, D.C. by the Times of Israel D.C. correspondent Rebecca Shimoni-Stoyle. Rebecca, thank you for joining us this morning. So the GOP is going to change its tactics now after an inside almost rebellion.
Indeed. It was a tense couple of hours here in Washington with a lot going on, particularly following Hillary Clinton's speech. And in fact, for a while, it looked like there was just up in the air as to what was going to happen with the vote that we had all thought was going to be on Friday and may still be on Friday regarding the president's deal in the House of Representatives.
What's the end game in terms of the conservatives within the Republican Party? Are they just trying to stall? Do they have other motives here? A lot of analysts are saying, you know, they just simply want to show that Obama's not going to win the House, and that's not going to look good in the long run, in the legacy, if you will, of the Iranian nuclear deal.
Well, the first answer is yes. They would like to throw as many obstacles as possible and make this as hard a road to hoe as humanly possible, not just for Obama, but increasingly for Speaker John Boehner, who has a somewhat adversarial relationship with his right flank and has for quite some time. But in addition to that, there's some thought that what the House conservatives are really trying to do is also set up a legal challenge. And it's possible that in the face of this legal challenge, the Iran nuclear deal debate is not only not going to go away, but will remain a political hot potato up until the 2016 elections, with this added bonus of the ongoing news cycle of a legal challenge as to whether or not President Obama even fulfilled his obligations under the Iran Nuclear Review Act of 2015.
And of course, we're going to see just in a moment how Cruz and Trump, two Republican frontrunners, dealt with their version of the Iranian nuclear deal. But how much can this actually impact the race within the Republicans? Is it giving certain candidates points and leading them in numbers because of this quote-unquote revolt?
Well, you mentioned Cruz and Trump, and certainly Trump is already running quite strong, perhaps stronger than ever. But for Ted Cruz, this is a potential moment of bonus. Today, when he spoke at a rally that was organized by Tea Party supporters and a number of allied organizations against the deal, he really got rock star treatment in a way that he's been missing in recent weeks. And, you know, while Cruz is in the top third of Republican presidential candidates, he has a long way to go before he approaches the popularity levels of a Trump or even of a Ben Carson. This is an issue that he has been following now for a very, very long time. He's been a very vocal opponent of the Iran nuclear deal in the Senate for months and, in fact, years now. And so this is really an issue that if it becomes a larger election issue and he can continue to run on it, he could possibly make some political bonus as the months go on.
Rebecca Shimoni-Stoyle there in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. And I want to, before we start our panel discussion, take a quick listen into what Ted Cruz and Donald Trump said yesterday.
If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, the single greatest risk is they would take that nuclear weapon. They would put it on a ship anywhere in the Atlantic, and they would fire it up straight into the air, into the atmosphere. They would set off what's called an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. It would take down the electrical grid on the entire eastern seaboard and kill tens of millions of Americans.
Never, ever, ever in my life have I seen any transaction so incompetently negotiated as our deal with Iran. And I mean never.
Ambassador Ettinger, of course, we took the very extreme cases from the Republican Party, but it's quite clear by now that this is a complete partisan issue. It's not something that Obama will see any kind of support from his Republican counterparts, not in the Senate and not in the House.
It has never been a partisan issue. The fact is that only a minority of Democrats among the American people support that agreement. The fact is that the next in line to become the Democratic leader in the Senate opposes this agreement, and the fact is that the ranking Democrat on Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate opposes this agreement. What this debate has underlined, in my mind, is the very special support enjoyed by Israel within the American public. Therefore, within both chambers of American Congress, which has forced even Obama to emphasize that he intends to further upgrade the cooperation with Israel, irrespective of the debate. And in my mind, we should go back to 1981 to understand what to expect. 81, Israel lost the battle over the shipment of AWACS to Saudi Arabia. President Reagan was furious at Israel, but when the battle was over, we found out we won the war because Americans respect allies that are driven by principles and are not deterred by immense challenges. They don't want an ally to be a wimp on a rainy day.
But Tala, if we hear what Ambassador Oettinger is saying, probably Hillary Clinton, the Democratic presidential candidate, understands this as well and says, I need to differentiate myself from my former boss. Otherwise, it's going to be more of the same for a lot of the American public.
Well, Clinton is in a delicate situation. On the one hand, her name is basically on the Iran deal as she served as the Secretary of State in the formative period of these negotiations. And yesterday, there's a huge piece in the Wall Street Journal exposing actually her contribution to a policy shift inside the administration. So that is on the one hand, and on the other hand, she doesn't want to break with her party, the Democratic Party, and many of the Democratic constituents have standed behind Obama and have given him full support on this deal. So she doesn't want to break with him. On the other hand, she does have concern about the Jewish community, which has been targeted by a very, very heavy campaign in the past few weeks, and could be veering anyway towards the Republicans. So the speech he gives yesterday is a much more embracing speech than we are used to hearing from the president, for instance. Much more vigilant on how she will enforce the deal, and that is the message. The message is she is better for Israel. She doesn't want to have the stain of these strained relationship between Israel and between Netanyahu and Obama to have this stain on her campaign.
And has Jerusalem responded to the speech? Of course, we know the personal relationship between Netanyahu and Obama, but Hillary Clinton is a whole different story.
Well, yeah. First of all, I have to say, for weeks, people have been trying to understand the logic of Netanyahu continuing with this battle against the president, against the deal in Congress, and people have been questioning what is the logic behind. But now, as we see two things. And Netanyahu has been claiming again and again, this will not hurt our relationship with the United States. It is stronger than this. And we do see at the end of the day that when Hillary Clinton stands on stage and in her campaign, in a campaign speech, pledges to give a lot of support to the United States, pledges to invite the Prime Minister to the White House within her first month in office. This actually refutes the claims that have been directed towards the Prime Minister, and that has, of course, been the reaction in Jerusalem. Another thing that we see that is happening, this whole Republican delay, is that there is an idea of undermining the legitimacy of the deal and continuing it until 2016. And there has been an explanation that has been given by some political analysts here in Israel to Netanyahu's behavior. That's part of the campaign is to undermine support for the Democratic Party towards 2016 using the deal, because it is clear that Netanyahu would probably prefer, he of course is very happy with Clinton's remarks, but he will probably prefer to have a Republican president elected in 2016.
Ambassador Oettinger, do you agree that Netanyahu, although he did praise maybe through his office Clinton's words, he does want to look for a Republican president? Is a relationship with the Democratic Party at this point that bad?
I don't think so. And again, you look at the Democrats who have supported Obama. They have done so reluctantly. Democratic senators agreed to support in return for packages promised by the White House to their states. Democratic House members were promised packages for their districts. There are only so many times that the president can offer such packages. Right. But as far as the whole agreement, we should realize this is not a treaty which is binding by American law. This is an executive agreement. And to understand what is an executive agreement, unlike binding treaty, we can go back to 1967, few days before the eruption of the 6 Days War. Prime Minister Levi Eshkol of Israel called President Johnson of the U.S., who was, by the way, one of Israel's best allies, and he waved at him an executive agreement by President Eisenhower, which promised Israel American military intervention in case the Egyptians would threaten Israel. And the response by LBJ, a typical Texan, was, "It ain't worth a solitary dime," because an executive agreement hardly binds the president who signs it, definitely does not bind any succeeding president.
And we are hearing, of course, Joe Biden yesterday, perhaps a candidate for the 2016 elections, hinting that Obama and Netanyahu will meet, maybe not the two of them, but at least Israel and Washington will have to meet in the coming days. Is there a way to mend the relationship personally right now, or is this executive agreement, as you call it, something that's going to widen the gap between the two leaders?
I don't believe that one can bridge the gap between the two persons, because this is not personality. This is not a question of let's go and golf, let's go and have a drink together and we'll mend fences. We're talking about two worldviews which have nothing to do with each other, in my mind. One is completely detached from world affairs, considering the Arab tsunami as a transition from tyranny to democracy. And the other one, Netanyahu, is embedded in Middle Eastern realities. But the very, very encouraging fact is that U.S.-Israel relations have never been top to bottom, has always been bottom to top, because the American people and American Congress and the military establishment and the agricultural establishment, etc., do respect and appreciate Israel. Therefore, presidents just like Obama or Bush Sr. had no choice but to continuously upgrade the relations.
Netanyahu will be meeting Secretary of State Kerry during his New York visit to the UNGA at the end of the month. We already know that, but you also feel a clear sense, and I agree with Mr. Ettinger here, that the fact is that everyone is kind of waiting to get to the day after. Both in Washington and in Jerusalem, people want this whole very painful debate to be over and to start talking really again about the cooperation and about upgrading the cooperation and Netanyahu had one logic that is actually coming through and realizing in front of our eyes. He said that the fact that this that the Congress debate will actually enlarge the compensation Israel will be getting from the United States. And actually this is what we're hearing. We're hearing recurring offers from Congressmen. Clinton talked about it yesterday, to embrace Israel with a very, very generous security package and maintaining the qualitative military aid. So yes, at the end of the day, I do think that Israel-U.S. relations will survive this. Of course, Netanyahu and Obama, that's already a lost cause.
Tal Shalev, thank you for joining us. Ambassador Ettinger, thank you for joining us this morning. And we say now, once again, good morning to Ami Kaufman, who joins us daily to discuss the news. Ami, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Yael. We're going to start with Syria and a pretty major setback for Assad forces. After a 2-year siege, some insurgents led by al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria have captured a northwestern army air base, which pretty much leaves the Idlib province free of government forces. We have a report about it. Let's take a look.
The Syrian regime's last stronghold in Idlib province has fallen to a coalition of Islamists, which includes the al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front. The Abu Dukhur airbase was taken by the rebels after a siege that lasted for nearly 2 years. The group of militants, which has dubbed itself the Army of Conquest, now controls most of northwestern Idlib, except for 2 predominantly Shia villages held by pro-government militia. But the setback for President Bashar Assad may not be long-lived, as reinforcements in the form of Russian troops are making their way into Syria. A regime official confirmed Wednesday that Russia has upped its military presence in the country, as Moscow appears to be doubling down on its support for Assad. According to media reports, both Iran and Greece approved Russian requests to use their airspace for flights to Syria, covering the period ending September 24th. Meanwhile, Australia became the latest country to enter the Syrian foray, with Prime Minister Tony Abbott announcing Canberra would extend its airstrikes against Islamic State militants in Iraq into neighboring Syria.
So the Australians have now entered into that.
Australians and the Russians are getting into this. Everybody's getting into this.
A little
just getting
commentary from my side. A little 4 years too late.
4 years too late, yeah.
But that's my.
And with the Russians as well, I guess Assad could say it's 4 years too late.
Exactly.
Depends on whose side you're on, right?
I won't let you know.
We're going to Bangkok, that Bangkok bombing on 17th of August that killed 20 people.
No motives for that, right?
Not yet. Well, things are kind of moving forward with the investigation a bit, I think. Thai police say that a key suspect, a man that they actually arrested a week ago when he was trying to cross the border into Cambodia, he confessed, this guy, to giving a bag containing a device to the man who carried out the attack. We actually have pictures of this from Reuters of a reenactment that the Thai police did with him yesterday in Bangkok at the Erawan Shrine, showing where he gave that bag to the man who was in that famous CCTV. He was the man with the yellow T-shirt who placed the bomb, and after he dropped the bag, he left, and a few moments later, there was an explosion. So he hasn't been found yet. That man with the yellow shirt has not been found yet. We have this guy in custody and another foreigner in custody, and the mastermind apparently of the attack is still run off. They say Thai authorities say that he left the country a few days actually before the whole thing, before the attack took place.
Right. So details are trickling in.
Details are trickling in, definitely. Just moving ahead. Here in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Reuven Rivlin are really not doing well as friends anymore. And we kind of knew this for a while already. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu did not want Reuven Rivlin to become president last year. He really fought hard against it, but he failed in that little battle, and Rivlin became president. And now, in an interview to Israeli Army Radio yesterday, the President Rivlin says that he has not met with Benjamin Netanyahu for the last 2 months.
Wow.
They have not talked. They usually meet once or twice a month, and it has not happened anymore. And he said in the interview that I think we've exhausted our differences vis-a-vis our relations with the different international systems.
Wow.
So it looks like things are getting cold there again. Not that they were really warm to begin with.
Right.
So we're going to have to keep an eye on that.
And it should be noted that the president did not cancel any of his interviews with the Israeli press, as did the Prime Minister.
As did the Prime Minister. That's a very good point. Glad you brought that up.
So at least we know what's going on, because Rivlin gave us a sneak peek into the relationship.
The only thing that Benjamin Netanyahu does is he puts these little posts on Facebook claiming that he's the best Prime Minister.
Yeah, people are not happy about that.
No, not happy at all. Over to Turkey. Tensions are really running high in Turkey after, in 3 days, 29 soldiers and policemen were killed in various attacks perpetrated by pro-Kurdish forces, most of them the PKK. Now there are rallies in major cities, a lot of violence in major cities. We have a report about it. Let's take a look.
Ethnic tensions are threatening to ignite Turkey, with near-daily internal clashes putting into question the viability of snap elections scheduled for November 1st. Overnight, Turkish nationalists attacked the headquarters of the pro-Kurdish HDP political party. This amid intensifying violence between Ankara and the PKK.
186 attacks were carried out. This is definitely a planned assault that was orchestrated from one particular place. The president and his staff at the palace are the ones behind these attacks.
The latest unrest comes after PKK militants killed 15 police officers in 2 bombings in eastern Turkish provinces. Those attacks came in the wake of the killing of 16 additional soldiers on Sunday, the deadliest single incident since a 2-year-old ceasefire was shattered in July. Ankara has responded with dozens of airstrikes against PKK targets in northern Iraq, where the group has bases.
We inflicted a great amount of damage on the organization. The recent developments are a result of the ensuing panic. The losses of the PKK can be expressed in the thousands, and we are working against the structures of the group inside our borders.
As a result, the predominantly Kurdish southeast has become a tinderbox, in which more than 100 temporary military zones have been declared. The head of the HDP said it was thus becoming impossible for Turkey to hold elections. The main opposition, CHP, has already tabled a parliamentary question on how security can be guaranteed during the campaign. Kurds seemed in the driver's seat just 3 months ago, when the HDP won enough votes to enter the government for the first time. in the process ending more than a decade of single-party rule by President Tayyip Erdogan's AKP. Erdogan, who is seeking a parliamentary mandate to extend his executive powers, has said the vote will go ahead.
The tension's definitely rising between the two sides.
Off to the States. Baltimore, the city of Baltimore, approved a settlement with the family of Freddie Gray, black man who was killed in April this year. With they're going to give the family $6.4 million as part of this one. If you remember, Freddie Gray was a man who was apprehended on the streets of Baltimore, and he was, we can have some pictures of this, was put into a van and handcuffed without a seatbelt.
Right.
And apparently the Baltimore police is known for doing this not only to Freddie Gray, but to other people as well. They put these people in vans and give them kind of rough rides, and they come out with pretty serious injuries sometimes. But this guy got very fatal neck injuries, and a week after this, he died in hospital. So these pictures, of course, when we saw he was basically okay when they apprehended him, he looked fine. I mean, he was limping a little, but he did not look like he was suffering from fatal injuries. Of course, sparked some riots in Baltimore, and now they were getting $6.4 million to the family. But 6 police officers are going to be charged for this incident, and they're still going to stand trial.
And it's incredible because you understand that it's partly due, maybe, I would like to believe, because these images, went viral. And that they were available. It wasn't just, testimonies, conflicting testimonies. We actually saw what happened.
One of those rare instances when you actually see it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are wondering how this is going to affect the trial of these 6 police officers, because it's almost as if the city is admitting guilt in a way. So their lawyers are probably very worried about this as well. Let's go to elections. Jeb Bush was on the first show of Colbert, Stephen Colbert, last night, or the night before, actually.
Right.
And it was a pretty good interview, But afterwards, Colbert put online. It was something that wasn't aired on the show, but he put it online, where Jeb Bush impersonated Trump.
Do we have this?
We have this. Let's take a look.
This is amazing. Let's take a look.
Governor Bush, what's your reaction on the Iran nuclear deal?
I think President Obama is being naive to trust the Ayatollahs, and this deal will ultimately create an even more unstable Middle East, and it troubles me.
What we've done is that we've written up here an answer that's just a little bit just Trumpier. All right, just read it right off there.
I will build a wall between the United States and Iran and make Mexico pay for it.
Okay.
I will turn the National Mall into a luxury golf course, and China will respect that. I promise to put meatloaf on the $10 bill and give Little John a cabinet position, which would send the message that this great nation will never turn down for what?
Not bad, right?
Not bad at all. Couldn't think of a better way to end the segment. Ami Kaufman, thank you. And thank you, Jeb Bush, for being a champ. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some of those suffering the worst during Europe's refugee crisis as the children undertaking the tumultuous journey. We'll take a closer look. Here are the headlines. Welcome back to the Morning Edition on I-24 News on this Thursday, September the 10th, 2015. Among the masses of refugees making their way to Europe these days, thousands are children, and it is they who suffer the most, both from the rough conditions of the journey, either by boat in cramped and dirty conditions or by land, requiring them to travel long distances on foot. For many, the journey also carries a risk of separation from their family members. Add to that the fact that many of them are fleeing war zones, and you have the recipe for a very much destroyed childhood. To discuss the emotional and psychological cost for children that is being exacted across the continent, we're now joined in studio by Dr. Shiri Daniels. Thank you for joining us. You're the National Director of Counseling Iran for Emotional First Aid, as well as by Nevonel Glick, the Deputy Director and COO of Israel Aid. Thank you very much both for joining us. Let's both take a look at the latest report from Europe's refugee crisis, and we'll take it from there.
More waves of migrants and refugees continue arriving in Vienna on Wednesday. Doram Hakib just got off the train from Hungary, a country he now fears.
People protested because of the bad conditions, and all the tents were burned. People ran. The security took the people who fled, some to jails. After they took the 50 people that were left to jail, there was no health service, no food. There were 9 people in one room that had only enough space for 4 people to stand.
Fearing Hungarian authorities is now common. Hussein, a refugee from Damascus, Syria, told us the camps were like prison. He asked us not to film him because he's afraid of all the governments. He's traveling with his wife and 4 children, and on Wednesday, they got to play with a dog for the first time. Hussein and Hagib don't plan on staying in Austria. They want to continue to Germany, Belgium, and France. A small number of refugees and migrants do decide to stay in Austria. They are brought to different refugee camps. The largest one, Traiskirchen, is about 30 kilometers from Vienna and is now home to 3,800 people. Refugees living here say the conditions aren't great.
There are bad conditions and there are good conditions. But in general, it's not good because it is a camp. Because the camp can give you more than what it has.
When refugees first arrive in Austria and request asylum, they receive these green cards. When they've been approved for the process to begin, they get this white one. When they receive the card, the regional government is supposed to find accommodations for them. But with such a large number of refugees, they don't have enough housing.
We're now going to go live to Vienna to our I-24 News correspondent, Merav Savil. You're standing by there, the international train station, of course. Merav, what's the latest that you're hearing this morning?
Well, yeah, people continue coming in and out of Vienna. Many here not only just arriving from trains from Budapest, but waiting for that next train to Germany. A lot of confusion about when they will leave, and a lot of that happens because these trains are being held back. Some of them at the border between Hungary and Austria, some of them elsewhere. But because of that, they're not really sure when they will get a chance to get on a train and head into Munich, where most of them are trying to get. As you heard in the report, that many of them do keep going on. Not many staying in Austria. Those who do go to that refugee camp. And I do want to turn back to that little story in the report about the dog. And since we're talking about children and how much these canines have a sense of, they bring relief and happiness. The smiles on their faces the first time that they ever got to play with the dog was absolutely astounding to see.
And we are talking, we will be talking shortly in studio about the children that are separated from their families and so forth. You've met quite a few children. What kind of situation have you seen them in? Have you met children separated from their families?
We haven't seen children that are separated from their families. Most of them are actually here huddled with their families, sleeping on their mother's laps or very close by. We did get a chance to talk to a couple parents and ask them how they really explain this to their children, this movement across countries. A lot of the things that happened to them in Hungary, they're telling us these horror stories of being in open camps like prisons with these children. There, where they told us that some of the families were separated. Not only friends were being pulled apart, but they were trying to separate families themselves, parents from children. One family told us that their kids know exactly what's going on, and not only about this journey that they're making, but they knew exactly what's going on back in Syria. And to them, this is just an extension of the war, and they still blame this on Bashar al-Assad and all the different players because they know who is involved in their war back home. One of the main things that's going on in Syria, and there's a family that we spoke to, is from the Al Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria, telling us that there aren't schools there and they're not learning. And not only that, a lot of these kids have psychological problems from the camp back home and living there and being hit all the time with bombardments and bombs, and there's no psychological aid for them there, and that's something that they're hoping to find for them here in the European countries.
Merav Savil, thank you for joining us this morning from Vienna, and continue doing the good work that you're doing. Dr. Daniels, when you do look at this today, Europe as children as a case study, can you compare it to other parts of history where the medicine, where psychology has looked and said, this is what's going to happen to these children. We know what the effects are in the long term, not only the short term?
Yeah, although because children find it difficult to verbalize the experience, we might think that they are too young to understand what's happening, and therefore we sometimes falsely believe that young age is a protective factor against the long-term effects of trauma. But in fact, children are affected deeply and profoundly, also when they are themselves are threatened and when their families are threatened. We see symptoms of trauma which are physical, cognitive, emotional. The sense of safety is shattered. Sometimes they blame themselves for the outcome or for not being able to to make a difference in the terrible outcome. We see long-term influences in the sense of learning, the adjusting. It's connected with the mental issue of post-trauma, as well as depression, anxiety, addiction, self-harm. The list goes on and on. And it's important to understand that the most protective factor is a constant adult parent or caregiver which is there for the child and is there to let him verbalize or just get it out there, express his emotions exactly, and validate those emotions by being there and by reassuring that the adults in his life are doing their best to protect him.
And Vonel, you've traveled the world with IsraAid, from humanitarian disaster to conflict zone to natural disasters, right? A range of ways where children, unfortunately and tragically, find themselves sometimes really separated from their families. Do you have a personal story from a specific place that you want to share?
Well, I think that one of the important things right now is coming back recently from Iraq, actually, from the north of Iraq, from Kurdistan, and seeing how people now, you know, we tend to think about some of the short-term effects or even the long-term effects based on the original trauma. But we don't think about what displacement does long-term. You're talking about children that have been, let's say, in a camp for a year, 2 years, and that's not going to change tomorrow. And even their parents and them, nobody wants to get used to this idea. That when you ask them even a year later, people that I met a year ago, that I go back and I say, are you building a home now on the way in this camp? They say, no, I'll be home tomorrow. And that's something that is not going to happen.
And prolonged, and that has
It's making it worse and worse and worse, because as the schools are having trouble coping with the idea of building a structure and a routine, the children are being affected and disrupted more and more because they don't have the safe space that they need to work in.
I want to add to our discussion now Miraj Pradhan, the head of communications for UNICEF Jordan. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
So we are talking about the different ways that children are affected by refugee crises around the world. And actually in Jordan, as we heard here, children in refugee camps, even if it's only for a short time or if it's for a long time, does have different effects, because it's kind of a ad hoc kind of situation. This is not their final destination. This is not their final home. It's hard to make a way of life there.
Yes, I mean, we have about 100,000 refugees in refugee camps in Jordan. That's about 20% of the total in Jordan. And let's say about 50 to 60,000 are children. And when we've talked to most of them, like I've been hearing over the conversation, many of them still don't think they will be here forever. And that is the amazing thing about children. I mean, despite, many of them have to work. They cannot go to school because they have to look out for their families. And still they are saying, I'll go to school when I'm back in Syria. So their hope, their dreams are still very strong, which is really encouraging for us to know. But at the same time, on the other hand, we know the realities. They won't be back soon.
Right.
But to continue, supporting them through psychosocial counseling, as well as giving them learning opportunities and other life skills, that is really important for UNICEF.
Right, because we did talk about the long-term consequences and effects that we'll see in children, later adults, of their tragedies and their coping with what they're experiencing. What can UNICEF do on the ground short-term that perhaps has an immediate effect?
Actually, what UNICEF is already doing with partners is having a lot of these protective spaces, space where children can actually come and feel safe, learn, as well as play. Play is a big part of psychosocial counseling, which they start with my colleagues in child protection, where it's just about getting involved in music, drama, drawing, things like that, which helps the children. And many times, children don't speak out immediately. It'll take them a month or so, then they start talking with counselors. We've had cases where children didn't even talk for the first 1 to 2 months after they arrived in Jordan. And we've had cases where through these psychosocial counseling sessions, they've actually opened up. So these centers are placed throughout the country besides the refugee camps. So we are trying our best on the ground to do that for children.
Dr. Daniels, of course, we're hearing the great work that UNICEF is doing. Do more governments now in Europe, especially, need to put in a special emphasis on children, treat them differently than the rest of the migrants or the refugees as a category, and have a new policy or a specific policy for the children?
They have to have a holistic policy because, as my colleague was saying, refugee children also have suffered great loss of culture and of support. They lack the support of communities. There is a gap in culture, and that could make them feel lonely, isolated, and angry.
But the fact that also he mentioned many of them have to work in order to support their families. They're losing this, childhood that many other children around the world enjoy, this growing up, playing, and so forth. Is this missed time? This time that never really can come back?
Well, we do have to remember that each child reacts to trauma differently, and the effects of trauma differ, and also the severity. We do know that children and families have psychological resources, they have resilience, and those protect them from long-term effects. But we also have to know at the same time that trauma has its influences, but one of the also a long-term influence on the positive side is post-traumatic growth. That means on the one side they did lose out on their childhood, but on the other side, maybe in years to come, they will be able to find in themselves resources that wouldn't have developed otherwise, and we see that in many kinds of traumatic events.
Nevanella, of course, children are children no matter where you go. Did you find that specific places had cultures that treated the children, migrants, differently, that had a different approach towards the children?
Definitely. I think that every culture has its own way of being a child, of expressing yourself as an individual. I think that, for instance, in Haiti, there's a really strong emphasis on art. In other places, you have an emphasis on music, on dance, and so you see the children themselves using those cultural norms as a way of trying to get over and build a routine, because that idleness during the times where they're fleeing or in camps, that is the most difficult. They're doing nothing.
Do aid organizations, we heard about UNICEF, of course, need, and this is what I directed before to Dr. Daniels, do you need to treat children as a separate group of migrants? Do they need a different kind of policy towards them, different humanitarian aid than the rest of the migrants?
Well, there are definitely. In every crisis, it's all divided. For instance, the sir from UNICEF they were speaking to, he was from the child protection, and so the child protection area deals in very specific issues, and they work together. Of course, linked in with the larger policy, but it's always an issue that needs to be tackled independently as well.
Is there a specific place where specific children touched you especially, or is it something really universal?
Every place, everyone's special. It's wonderful.
It's pretty incredible, the tragedy that they go through and the trauma that they go through. But as you said, Dr. Daniels, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Post-traumatic growth, they learn something new.
There is a light, and also usually we help children by helping their surroundings, mainly their parents, calm parents who know how to be there for their children and take care of themselves.
And educate them despite.
The result is healthier children and happier ones.
Dr. Shiri Daniels and Nevanella Glick, thank you both for joining us, and I'll thank also Miraj Pradhan, the head of communications there in UNICEF Jordan. Coming up next, we're going to take a deeper look into the latest sports scandal that's rattling Israel, playing football on the Sabbath. We'll have a lot of discussion about that in just a short moment, but first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. We now get to say good morning to the I-24 News sports analyst, Yoav Borovich. Yoav, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ami Kaufman, you're here with some web news. We'll get to that in just a bit. Yoav, you're here with a huge controversy in Israel over, well, for some people, for the diehards, football fans, of course, whether you can play on Saturday or not. That is the question.
Indeed. It's another question of separation of, synagogue and state here in Israel.
I like
which
that,
is
synagogue and state. Yeah.
Never-ending topic, because for 70 years, even more, football was played on Saturday, the holy day for Jews, obviously. So religious people were excluded in a way from the whole soccer or football experience. You know, religious kids would not go and play, and a lot of religious people who keep the Shabbat, the Saturday, would not come to games. And a lot of players became, you know, just like spiritually stronger in the last few years, more religious-minded, and they mostly play in the second division. And they said, we do not want to play on Saturday. And they took it to court. Mm-hmm. And the judge said, she said that, yes, by law, you can demand not to work on the day of your... the day that is religiously sacred. You know, if you're a Muslim, you can demand not to be doing work on Friday. If you're a Christian, on Sunday, and if you're a Jew, on Saturday. So she said, yeah, okay, you're allowed to do it. But the Premier League and all of Israel's football is always played on Saturday. So the Premier League said, okay, if they don't allow the second division, we will not play now. And the country will need to decide once and for all if we can play on Saturday or not. Because all of the football establishment want to play on Saturday because this is the day.
Except for these few players.
Yeah, exactly. A few dozen players, because everybody can come to games on Saturday. All the secular people, obviously. The soldiers that are not in the army, the kids that are not in school. So it cannot be changed. You know, it has to be on a sabbatical. All over the world, football is played on the sabbatical day. So the Attorney General said yesterday that, okay, we will allow the status quo to remain, which means by law they're not allowed, but it won't be enforceable. We will not enforce it. And this is just a classic Israeli maneuver of having one law on the one hand and not enforcing it on the other hand, and everybody is happy.
Right.
You know,
well, and this is the question. You say it's the Israeli way, but a lot of maybe cynics will say, you know, this is all political. It's being driven by political interests. It's being, you know, raised up to the surface now. For 70 years, it hasn't really been spoken about. It hasn't been discussed. Why now is it being raised? And some will say it's a political, you know, motivation here.
For sure, because we have a new Likud government, stronger right-wing government. Miri Regev, the Minister of Sports, she always goes with a very conservative, you know, base and the religious base. So she supported the players on the second division who asked not to play on Saturday. Right. But she noticed what happened in the last 2 weeks when the whole country doesn't understand what's going on now. There's not going to be football on Saturday anymore. So she's actually quite happy with what the Attorney General said yesterday. Right. Everybody is just content with all those shticks, you know, of not enforcing the law, everybody's afraid of putting things on paper, of saying, are you allowed? Are you not allowed? Can we do it? Can we not do it?
Is it creating any kind of controversy from within the football leagues in Israel? Meaning, are certain players against these other players? Are certain coaches trying to voice out their opposition?
For sure, because a lot of players are supporting the players from the second division. A lot of players in the Premier League would also not want to play on Saturday. But they know that all of the TV money comes because they play on Saturday. They get the big bucks. They don't want to give it up. So they're not taking it to court, you know, but they would actually not want to play on a Saturday as well. Many players say, listen, if we won't be playing on Saturday, people will not come to the stands, to the stadiums, so we have to keep it like that. Let's see Matthias Sinbar report on this story.
Let's take a look.
To play or not to play football on Saturday? That is the question on every Israeli professional football player's mind. But how did it all start? As part of a sponsorship deal for broadcasting rights for Israel's secondary division football league, it was decided that the week's top games must be aired on Saturday, smack in the middle of the Jewish Sabbath. The problem? The league hasn't played a game on Saturday in 6 years. Some of the players, like goalkeeper Avi Ivgi, feel tricked. After playing for 10 years in the country's elite clubs, he gradually became more religious, and in order not to transgress the Jewish laws forbidding work on the Sabbath, had decided to change clubs and play in the secondary league.
I have received dozens of text messages from professional football players supporting my decision, even if they don't keep Shabbat themselves. I have also received messages from coaches and sports directors. Receiving also the support of 3 Israeli Arab teams that have signed my petition proves that everyone has a right to enjoy Saturday as a day of rest.
Some of the players who were willing to play games on Saturdays in the Premier League for a substantial salary now want to receive an additional income if they are to play on Saturdays in the second league too. As sport agent David Haddad explained, it's as much a matter of faith as a matter of money.
This is going to make the second league's clubs lose money, a lot of money. I don't know how they will be able to handle the loss because this money is very important for them. I know a lot of footballers who were playing in the first league and decided to go to League number 2 so they wouldn't have to play games on Shabbat. And now they want to force them to play on Shabbat. It's going to be a big problem for them.
For the Football Federation's chief of communications, this is a false argument. He claims the players are being hypocrites and only consider their own interests.
We do not have a solution yet. I'm not only talking about the professional leagues, I'm mostly talking about the children. There aren't enough stadiums available, and those already existing don't have projectors. It makes it impossible for a game to be played in the evening during the week.
However, according to the Israeli Employment Tribunal, Saturday is a day of rest in Israel. If the Football Federation were to force the players to play games on Saturdays, it would violate the law. Israel's National Sport Gambling Organization, meanwhile, has already made its decision. There will not be any betting on games of the Israeli Championship this weekend. Here again, giving a sort of forced rest for the players and the fans.
This definitely is going to be one of those controversies that will just keep on coming up until, as you said, someone actually takes a stand and makes a unilateral decision.
Nobody will take a stand. You know, that's also a possibility here.
Interesting. I mean, you had a good solution. Just make it.
Yeah, just extend the weekend to Sunday. It's pretty simple, right?
Yes.
I think that has, you know, legitimately good economic factors driving that as well.
I'm fine with it.
It's not the first time. One last story: Palestinian football.
Yes, actually, quite a cheerful story. You know, because for years now, Palestinians want to be part of the football family, global family. And they were not really allowed to do so because they still don't have a country. But actually, in the last few years, FIFA is recognizing the Palestinian Authority as a country. You know, it can compete for the World Cup. It can just do whatever all the other associations do. And this week, they hosted the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, in a huge game in the West Bank. 30,000 people. Wow. There were no goals, unfortunately. Yeah. But still, it was just a huge event over there. UAE are a very strong team. They played in World Cups in the past. And Palestine were able to end with a draw, which is a very good result. Yeah. And here people in Israel are already asking, if they will play Israel, who's going to win? Because it's not so clear-cut anymore. Right. And, you know, we can just hope, Yael, for football as a shared passion, as a shared language, it can really bring people together. Right. And we can just hope for a friendly match between Israel and Palestine. Maybe we will be able to once and for all to utilize the beautiful game to bring us together, because it's one of the only things that it seems people
I think Israel needs to first do it within its own football association, Beitar Yerushalayim and other teams.
It's all part of the same story.
First year, and then but yeah, you know, kudos to them for being able to play in the sandstorm. That, for me, that's the biggest news
Not
right
so
there.
healthy.
Not so healthy. Yoav, thank you for joining us. Ami, what are we starting with the web?
Okay, let's file this under toys that Ami wants.
Okay.
And feel free to buy this if you have some extra cash
I
for
always
me.
have extra cash. How did you know?
And you want to buy me a gift. I'm not really like a real Star Wars geek, but I do like the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And you know, now they have the merchandise that there's a new movie coming out.
Right.
For some reason, they have merchandise coming out before the movie. When I was growing up as a kid, the merchandise kind of came out after, but now it's all before.
Advertisers know what they're doing now.
And
That's
there's a famous droid now. He's called BB-8. I guess it's the guy who replaces R2-D2. And there's a toy, and I really want this toy. Let's take a look at what it looks like.
BB-8, go forward.
You want it or your kids want it?
I want it. It's app controlled. I want it, and it's $150, so
it's pretty pricey.
It's pretty pricey, isn't it?
I would say for a droid. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now I'm insulting a lot of people for a droid.
Anyway, this one is a little cheaper. This one comes from China, so maybe that's why it's cheaper. It's kind of the opposite of Jenga. It's called cat Jenga. Remember Jenga is when you pile a thing, all these wooden things, and you take them out and try not to for your tower to collapse. This is the opposite. You try to put as many cats as possible, one on top of the other, and we have some more pictures of it. And
look.
and try to make the tallest tower.
That's nice. That's
without
a good
toppling
one.
it.
Oh, and there's a cat actually toppling it.
Yeah, I like this one. Anyway. This one is kind of interesting. This is a movie I think I'm going to want to see. Cate Blanchett is going to be starring in a biopic about Lucille Ball. And it's going to be written by Aaron Sorkin.
And you really want to watch it? Sorry.
Well, you know what? As a kid growing up in the States, when I came home from school, and I turned on my TV, which is what I used to do. There were reruns and reruns and reruns of I Love Lucy. I actually grew up on I Love Lucy. I would love to see this movie. It's going to be focused on.
It's very wordy. Sometimes, you know.
Very wordy.
Yeah.
That's a good point because this article in Vulture kind of brings that up. But they also bring up another thing. You may recall that Sorkin, in an email leaked in the Sony hack, the famous Sony hack, he didn't have such nice words for Cate Blanchett, who he was going to work with. He took a swipe at her and called her Oscar-winning role in Blue Jasmine nothing close to the degree of difficulty of the men nominated that year.
Oh.
So I wonder how they're
going to... gender thing, huh?
Yeah, gender thing. I wonder now how they're going to work together on this film. It'll be interesting to see.
My agent will speak to your agent. I think that's how they've mended fences.
Right. I'm looking forward to it, though. Whiskey.
Yeah.
I'm a whiskey drinker, so this is kind of interesting. What happens to whiskey? This is from Vice. What happens to whiskey that spent nearly 3 years in space?
What
just landed back on Earth? There was a Scottish distillery called Ardbeg Distillery. They launched with one of the space capsules to the International Space Station in 2011. And it was an experiment to test the impact of microgravity on terpenes, which are the flavor building blocks for many foods and wines. And they had a vial of this whiskey, and they had a vial that they saved to compare when this thing came back. So it came back, and the results are kind of disappointing.
Oh.
The man who tasted it from this distillery said that its intense aroma had hints of antiseptic smoke, rubber, and smoked fish, along with a curious perfumed note like violet or cassis and powerful woody tones, leading to immediate aroma. So as Vice sums it up, you know, if you spend...
It's better to hang out on Earth?
Yeah, after 3 years, your whiskey tastes like herring doused in Dettol. Not really a very nice experiment. It didn't come out...
And a good argument why to stay here on Earth and not move to Mars like everyone's asking us. The whiskey's better over here, yeah.
There's a malicious app out that is for people who like porn, and it's called Adult Player, but it's turned into ransomware. You know what ransomware is? Yeah. It basically locks your phone and it demands ransom. And what it did is this ransomware took photos of unsuspecting victims who downloaded this app, and then they demanded ransom to unlock their phones. And this is, you can see, that's the home screen.
And do we know who is behind this?
No, you don't know who's behind it, but it's not an app that you can find on the real legit stores like Google Play and App Store. These are downloaded on fairly shady stores.
Right.
And they demand $500 via PayPal to unlock your phone. And even if you try to restart your phone and everything, it comes back and the ransomware is still there. Ransomware is getting very, very sophisticated.
Yeah. And there's not really much to do unless you...
Not much to do. There's really not much to do. You have to pay the money.
Someone's getting rich.
Yeah, someone's getting rich. So do not download this app called Adult Player.
Yeah. Well, try to constrain yourself from doing so.
Try to hold on. Yeah. Taylor Swift. This is the big Instagram battle. Taylor Swift passed Kim Kardashian as the most followed person in the world on Instagram. She has 45.5 million people following her, compared to 45.4 million of Kim Kardashian.
That's a big difference.
That's 100,000 people there.
Exactly.
But I don't think Kim is going to give up without a fight, right? I mean, she's going to...
I have to admit, I'm not following either. No, I'm not following.
How can you...
Are you following?
No, I'm not following. I'm not following either.
No, but if I had to choose, I would start following Taylor Swift. Maybe for those sweaters and cats. I see that's the headline. Yeah. Thanks to her cats and...
By the way, you know who's in third place?
Who?
Beyonce.
Oh.
She's also got over 40.
Her.
You are following her?
Yes.
We have time for one last quick video?
We don't have time, but we'll go and immediately start following our new Instagram account.
You should.
I will, and I will be reporting back to you, Ami, about
I'm waiting for that.
Thank you for joining us, Yoav. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next, we'll be talking about the upcoming Canadian elections. Also through Instagram. Look at that. We're having an Instagram-infused show today. We're going to look at the candidates' accounts. We'll make our own conclusions based on our very, of course, lovely Tal Shalev. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. Back with us in studio is our diplomatic correspondent, Tal Shalev. Tal, you're here with the latest from the Instagram accounts of Canadian politicians.
No, well, many politicians, but while we are busy discussing the U.S. elections, which is more than a year away, before 2016, Monday, 19th of October, it's going to be the end of 70 days of intense campaigning by the Canadian candidates in what has been described as one of the closest and most exciting campaigns in modern times. I'm not going to say anything about Canada and exciting, but I'll give you the short guide. But luckily for us, all three candidates have very, very active Instagram accounts, and they have been posting regular photos from their campaign. We can
so if you haven't heard about it in the news, go on Instagram, and it's pretty
exactly. And we will introduce you the three leading candidates, and also talk about recurring motives in their photos, which seem to appeal to the Canadian public. So we'll start with Stephen Harper, who's the Conservative sitting Prime Minister. He's led the government since 2006, and he's attempting to become the first Prime Minister since 1908 to win 400 consecutive elections.
He can learn from his friend here in Israel.
Exactly. He's Netanyahu's best friend, probably gave him some advice. So we see him flying on the campaign plane with his wife, Lauren. A lot of photos with his wife, Lauren. He has a Facebook, the next photo is of a Facebook Q&A that and just notice when we get to the next photo.
Yeah.
Well, if we get to the So notice the sticker on his computer of the family.
Oh,
yeah, that's very cute, very cute. Canada apparently is very strong on family values because we can see all of the candidates trying to stress and bring out their family. But just the most interesting thing about the Canadian campaign has been what has been known and termed as P-Gate. As a Toronto businessman, a member of Harper's party, ran for parliament, who's running for parliament, had to drop out of the race after he was caught on video urinating into a coffee cup.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So anyone that had any doubts about the drama around the elections, here's Tal Shalev making sure you know all the drama.
So then we have the Liberal Party, who is a center-left party that's led by Justin Trudeau, who is the son of the former Prime Minister Pierre, considered very young and attractive. We see the same kind of photos. The Liberals, by the way, used to be Canada's natural governing party. They held power for nearly 70 years in the 20th century, and that is what Justin Trudeau is trying to accomplish. He is actually winning on the Instagram vote. We can continue scrolling through the photos. We also see another campaign plane. We will also see a photo of him and his kids, a cute photo, by the way.
That's cute.
Yeah, that's cute. There's always sports.
That's an American pastime. The Canadians took that.
And yep. Well, and here with his kids on the train, he's leading on the Instagram vote with 12.3 thousand followers, which is quite impressive. And the last candidate we're going to talk about, his name is Thomas Mulcair. He's the leader of the NDP. It's the New Democratic Party. It's to the left of the Liberals. He's a lawyer from Quebec, and what's nice about him is that basically almost all of his Instagram photos have a caption both in English and in French.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Earlier this year, he's actually currently leading in the polls, and earlier this year he won a surprise majority in Alberta, and that is considered very significant for the prospects of winning the general elections. At the moment, so we see again a photo with his wife, a photo with the campaign plane, and the last photo, he has a Throwback Thursday photo, which is interesting. Look at this photo, and the caption is, it was World Beard Day event, apparently, and he says, "I've been sporting mine since before I was married and haven't looked back." All of those hipster beards probably want Tom Mulcair to win the elections.
It happened first in Canada, you know. You see, World Beer Day. Only in Canada can
everything begins in Canada, basally.
It does.
In case you missed it.
And speaking of beards, we have the one and only.
Yes.
Who said Beard Day?
Exactly.
And Canadians.
No.
Oh,
I have what?
No connection.
No, none.
Well, you should
melodramatic.
You should dive into
what? I don't even.
Anyway. Okay, but let's go to.
What does that even mean?
Let's go to a little more interesting, or at least more vivid campaign going on. So this is, of course, the never-ending Trump-Bush saga. Trump has been blasting Bush as low energy
Back
for
to
weeks.
America. Yeah.
So in his latest Instagram video, let's see his Trump's latest Instagram video.
Who would you like representing the United States in a deal with Iran, with this regime there?
I think Hillary would do a good job. Hillary's always surrounded herself with very good people.
That was Bush's answer. We'll get back to that. First, we need to see Trump's video, and then we can talk about, do we have Trump's video?
Let's take a look.
Having trouble sleeping at night? Too much energy? Need some low energy?
May have an HSA in some companies don't. But I think the norm ought to be
Jed, for all your sleeping needs.
So this is, of course, a takeoff of a rally that Bush had in New Hampshire, in which this woman just nodded off. Bush yesterday was on Fox and Friends, and he said actually that the woman is a big supporter of his, and that she woke up at 4 a.m. that morning to
he even answered? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
to drop her child off at daycare before working a 12-hour shift. And, of course, he answered with a video of his own, the one we saw before, with highlighting Trump's 2007 statement that Hillary Clinton would do a good job on Iran. So that's it continues to give us a lot of material for our Instagram segments. Another thing that happened this week: Bernie Sanders has many reasons to celebrate. He's the surprise of these elections at this point, but he also had his birthday on Tuesday.
Happy
he was
birthday.
74 years old, and just earlier this week he had a 9-point lead in New Hampshire over Clinton.
I saw that.
So basically, if he wins, he'll be 75 on Inauguration Day, and that would easily beat Reagan's record as the oldest president, because he was 69 when he took office in 1981. But because we're celebrating Sanders' birthday, we selected a pic of the batch of the best Throwback Thursday photos he has posted. From this one is from 1959, when he graduated the James Madison High School in Brooklyn.
Right.
And this one is from 1983. His campaign for the mayor of Burlington, which is Vermont's largest city.
Yeah. Nice.
Yes.
I love how politicians use Instagram to do their TBTs, their Throwback Thursday photos.
They all look
Clinton
really nerdy.
also made everyone say a happy birthday to her husband just 2 weeks ago on Instagram as well.
But they all look really nerdy. I think, I wouldn't be
it's a
posting photos
Trump doesn't
of myself.
look that nerdy.
Trump looks nerdy in the 70-year photos, but he also hasn't been posting the throwback photos.
I think he likes the way he looks now better.
It's interesting that the candidates want to stress how old they are, but whatever.
Old and wise.
But the incumbent Obama is still in office, and the White House is kicking off the new school year with a new initiative, a new campaign to promote efforts for a free community college education.
Okay.
Let's see the video, and then I'll tell you an interesting fact about it.
Join the movement at Heads Up.
Heads Up.
Heads Up.
Heads Up America.
.us.
Nice.
Just saying that the White House, this is a plan that the White House has been promoting since January, but it hasn't been able to overcome some of the Congress stumble blocks that has been the Republican Party has been putting. But now the White House is partnering with a digital agency called Huge, which is known for helping some of the biggest brands in the world reconfigure their identities. They worked with Nike, they worked with Google, they worked with MTV, they worked with Audi, and now they're working with the White House.
Nice. The White House is forking out the cash to rebrand themselves.
Definitely.
That's what you're telling me.
Yes.
Good. It's never too late to be a publisher, advertiser. Tal Shalev, thank you for joining us. You might have noticed the beard that walked in.
Hello there.
That's Amit Kling,
I just bearded my way
Aviv
right into here.
Culture editor who, as he said, bearded his way right into here. You're here with This Week in History. It's been a tough week in history.
Yes, but let's start on the lighter side because
Okay.
all the worst things somehow happened closer to this date.
Right.
Let's go back almost 50 years, 49 years, and also go forth into the 22nd century at the same time.
Okay.
Because September 6th, 1966, is when NBC premiered Star Trek.
Right.
Which is, I think we have a bit to take a look at.
Let's take a look.
All right.
Amazed us with their discoveries and inspired us with their courage. Their ship has journeyed beyond imagination. Her name has become legend. Her crew, the finest ever assembled.
Star Trek Infused show. I have
What?
to tell you. Yeah, they're selling droids now.
They're selling droids.
Yeah, like a toy. It's called It's called a droid, and you can buy it at $150.
I don't have $150 for a droid.
That's what that was my response.
Can't spare $150 for a droid, but I will tell you that looking at this series now, it's incredibly naive. You know, it encapsulates a lot of actually what happened socially in the 60s, because the creator Gene Roddenberry,
right?
He was a huge optimist, and Star Trek, though it's a science fiction adventure series, it's incredibly optimistic. It's utopian, it's a moneyless future.
Right.
It's a completely equal future, and looking at it now, it may seem funny, but back then it was downright radical. It was quite subversive in its way. A lot of Star Trek holds even the title for, the first interracial kiss broadcast on television. That was Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura.
Right.
And, of course, it launched an insane franchise, unequaled in its fandom.
Right.
I think.
So, but even
Star Wars guys, they come close, but they're not there. I'm sorry. I said it on television, I'll be assassinated outside by a phaser.
But there's optimism.
death.
They're still very much well loved and so forth. There's a huge, as you said, a huge.
Yes, I mean, the first one is pretty much mocked. It's corny, it's formulaic. The acting is so-so at best. The later series, they were more sophisticated, more darkish, more modern, but there's a charm to the original one.
Absolutely. What's next?
What's next is September 6th, 1991, is when they took what was known since 1924 as Leningrad and made it back into St. Petersburg.
That is a big chunk of history there.
It is. St. Petersburg, it has a long, long history of names.
Right.
It also has an aura of aristocracy.
Of course, but that's that's the root of the conflict between St. Petersburg and Moscow, because St. Petersburg, back in when it was just called Petrograd, that's the older name before it was Germanized in the 18th century. It was the capital, and the capital was moved to Moscow. And St. Petersburg and its residents sort of maintain this. It has an elitist charm to it, and Moscow is much more simple in its way. It's also not, but compared to the sort of highbrow vibe of St. Petersburg, it is.
And then Leningrad.
And it was, of course, after Lenin's death, it was Leningrad for years. Russia, of course, has a history of, they rush to name things after dead people. And I don't know, I guess it's going to be Putinburg sometime soon. Right? That's where it's going. No, but seriously, the return to St. Petersburg, it has a different context now than then.
Yeah.
Because in 1991, it was just mainly shaking off any communist symbol.
Right.
And now it's used as a part of, there's a whole trend, a tendency to look at Russian monarchy as a sort of ideal.
Right. So definitely a lot's in a name.
A lot of romanticization of the monarchy. Last, we remain in the monarchy as it's September 6th, again, 1997, exactly 6 years later, was the funeral of Princess Diana. That was, I think, maybe still the largest, televised funeral event. Back then, definitely.
Absolutely.
Can't think of a, that's, of course, not the funeral itself. Yes, the happier days. 3.5 million were, not literally at the funeral, but sort of converged around London.
The millions watching on their TV screens, as you mentioned.
Yes,
I remember watching.
I think we all do, and it was. All things considered, it was also an insanely attention-grabbing scandal at the mid-90s. Let's not forget the circumstances.
And it still is. People are still, probing into what exactly happened.
Still probing, still looking into that conspiralcy connection.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
We're going to go just quickly, the last one.
Yes. There's so much to say about it that there's almost nothing to say in a way. But we're on September 10th, so I guess
tomorrow
it's obvious.
Is September 11th. Right.
What can we add? In a way,
the pictures.
It's the unfathomable, I think.
The unfathomable, and the pictures that still shock every time you see them once again. And We can go into where the world is today
we can just
because
talk
of September 11th.
We can talk hours on this,
Yeah.
I think. So perhaps.
And all the culture that has come out
it's
of
it's
that
like
day,
it's been said that the thing you cannot talk about, you best be quiet about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's a very wise Amit Kling quote.
It's not. I'm quoting. I did not.
No, I had no doubt that you were not having prose here on the morning.
No, I think
inventing. Amit Kling, thank you for joining
you.
us this morning. Tal, thank you for being here. That's all for today. Next up are the headlines. You can, of course, find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Watch us all the time on our website, i24news.tv. We'll be here tomorrow with another i24 News Morning Edition.